I was standing in his bedroom doorway when he asked me to help him shower. And the way his voice cracked on that last word made my heart stop beating for what felt like an entire minute. "I can't lift my arm above my shoulder," Ethan said. His eyes fixed on the floor, his jaw tight with something that looked like shame, but felt like something else entirely. "The doctor said I need help for the next 2 weeks," my mom offered, "but I can't let her see me like this." The cast on his right arm was still bright white, barely 3 days old. His collarbone was fractured in 2 places from the collision during last Friday's soccer match. I'd been there when it happened, heard the sickening crack that echoed across the field, watched his face go pale as he crumpled onto the grass. I'd ridden in the ambulance with him because his parents were 2 hours away at his sister's college orientation, and I couldn't stand the thought of him being alone. Now he was asking me this. "Yeah," I heard myself say, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "Yeah, of course I'll help you." Something flickered across his face, relief, maybe your gratitude or something I couldn't name. He nodded once, then turned toward his bathroom. And I followed him like I'd been following him for the past 3 years. Ever since freshman year when he'd invited me to try out for the soccer team, and somehow we'd become inseparable. That was 4 days ago. That was when everything started to change. When the careful distance I'd maintained between what I felt and what I allowed myself to acknowledge began to collapse like a house of cards in a windstorm. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Alex Morrison, and I've been in love with my best friend since I was 16 years old. I just didn't realize it until I had to help him take off his shirt. The beginning, I suppose, was 3 years earlier, on a sweltering August afternoon during sophomore year tryouts. I'd never played organized soccer before, had barely kicked a ball, except in gym class. But Ethan Carter had stopped me in the hallway that morning with his impossible smile and those green eyes that seemed to catch light like sea glass. "You should try out for the team," he'd said, blocking my path to chemistry class. "You've got the build for it. And we need people who aren't afraid to run." "I don't know anything about soccer," I'd replied, trying not to stare at the way his hair fell across his forehead. "Still damp from morning practice. I'll teach you." He'd said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Like he made offers like this to strangers every day. Maybe he did. Ethan had always been the kind of person who collected people, who made you feel like you were the only person in the room, even when you were standing in a crowded hallway. I showed up to tryouts because I couldn't think of a good reason not to. I made the team because Ethan spent 2 hours after practice every day for a week teaching me footwork, passing, positioning. I stayed on the team because somewhere between August and October, Ethan Carter became the most important person in my life. We fell into friendship the way some people fall into love suddenly, completely without meaning to. We sat together at lunch. We partnered for every group project. We texted until 2 in the morning about nothing and everything. He introduced me to his friends, and I introduced him to mine. And somehow our separate worlds merged into one shared space where we existed together. I told myself it was just friendship. I told myself the way my heart sped up when he laughed was normal. I told myself everyone felt this way about their best friend. This desperate need to be near them, to make them smile, to know everything about them. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true. The first time I realized it might be something more was the spring of junior year. At a party I hadn't wanted to attend, Ethan had dragged me there, insisting I needed to be more social, then promptly disappeared with some girl from his calculus class. I'd spent an hour nursing the same warm beer, watching him from across the crowded living room. He was dancing. If you could call it that, more like swaying with his arms around her waist, his mouth close to her ear. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on his chest. I felt something dark and vicious unfurl in my stomach. Jealousy, that's what it was. Sharp and bitter and impossible to ignore. I left the party without saying goodbye. Ethan texted me 20 minutes later. "Where'd you go?" "Wasn't feeling it," I'd replied. "Want me to come over?" I'd stared at that message for 5 full minutes, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. "No," I finally typed. "I'm good." He showed up at my house anyway, 30 minutes later, smelling like beer and someone else's perfume. "What's wrong?" he'd asked, standing in my doorway with genuine concern etched across his face. "Nothing," I'd lied. Just tired. He'd studied me for a long moment, those green eyes seeing too much. And then he'd stepped inside and flopped onto my couch like he owned the place. Let's watch something. That documentary about ocean exploration you were talking about? We'd stayed up until 4 in the morning. Sprawled on opposite ends of the couch, and by the time he left, I'd convinced myself that jealousy meant nothing. He was my best friend. Of course, I didn't want to share him with some random girl at a party. That's what I told myself. Anyway, senior year arrived with the weight of college applications and the mounting pressure of futures we'd have to navigate separately. Ethan had scholarship offers from 3 Division I schools for soccer. I'd been accepted to the state university 2 hours north, planning to study engineering. We didn't talk about what would happen after graduation, didn't acknowledge the approaching end. This chapter where we existed in each other's orbit every single day. The soccer season was brutal that year. Our team was good enough to make it to the state semifinals for the first time in school history. Ethan was the star midfielder. The player scouts came to watch. The one local news reporters wanted to interview. I'd worked my way up to starting defender. It's primarily because I'd spent 3 years learning to read. Ethan's movements like a second language. We had this thing during games. This almost telepathic connection where I knew where he'd be before he got there. Could send passes to empty spaces that he'd materialize in like magic. Coach called it chemistry. Ethan called it proof we shared a brain cell. I called it the most painful kind of torture. Being that attuned to someone who would never feel the same way. The injury happened during the semifinal game, 3rd quarter, when we were up by 1 goal. A defender from the other team went in for a tackle, hard and high, and definitely illegal, and caught Ethan at exactly the wrong angle. I heard the crack from 15 feet away, saw him go down in a way that made my blood turn to ice. I was at his side before the whistle even finished blowing. Before the ref could call the foul, before our coach could start running onto the field, Ethan's face was white, his breathing shallow, his good hand clutching his right shoulder. "Don't move," I said, my own hand shaking as I knelt beside him. "Don't try to move, okay?" "It's bad," he gasped out. "Alex, I heard it. I know. I heard it too. But you're going to be okay. Just breathe." The ambulance ride was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Ethan's parents were 2 hours away, and he kept apologizing for ruining the game, for letting the team down, for being dramatic. I held his good hand the entire time and told him to shut up, that none of that mattered, that he was going to be fine. At the hospital, while we waited for his parents and for the doctor to read his x-rays, he looked at me with pain-glazed eyes and said, "You didn't have to come with me. Where else would I be?" I'd replied, and something in his expression shifted, softened, became something I couldn't quite read. The x-rays showed a fractured clavicle and a separated shoulder. Surgery wasn't necessary, but he'd need a sling and rest and physical therapy. No soccer for at least 6 weeks, which meant his season was over. Which meant scouts wouldn't see him play in the championship if we made it that far. I watched his dreams deflate in real time. Watched the devastation settle across his features. And I would have given anything to take that pain away from him. We won the semifinal game without him. We made it to the state championship. And Ethan asked me to help him through the recovery process because I was the only person he trusted to see him vulnerable. That's how I ended up in his bathroom on a Tuesday afternoon, watching him struggle with the buttons on his shirt with his left hand, his face flushed with frustration and something that looked like embarrassment. "I can do it," he said, even as his fingers fumbled with the 3rd button for the 5th time. "Ethan," said his name quietly, stepping closer. "Let me help. That's why I'm here." Dropped his hand, his jaw tight. "This is humiliating." "It's not." I reached for the buttons, my fingers surprisingly steady, despite the fact that my heart was trying to break through my rib cage. "You got hurt. That's not something to be embarrassed about." I undid the buttons slowly, carefully, trying to focus on the task and not on the fact that I was undressing my best friend, not on the way his breathing had changed, not on the warmth radiating from his skin. The shirt fell open, revealing the purple bruising that spread from his shoulder across his chest, angry and dark against his tan skin. "Jesus," I breathed. my fingers hovering over the edge of the bruise without touching it. "Does it hurt this bad all over?" "Only when I breathe," he said with a weak attempt at humor. I helped him shrug out of the shirt, supporting his injured arm, moving slowly so I wouldn't cause him more pain. He was wearing a white t-shirt underneath, and I helped him with that too, trying not to notice the way his stomach muscles contracted when I lifted the fabric, trying not to look at the way his chest rose and fell with each careful breath. This was clinical, I told myself. This was just helping a friend. This didn't mean anything. But then I looked up and met his eyes, and something in his gaze made all my careful rationalizations crumble to dust. He was looking at me like he'd never seen me before, like I was something precious and terrifying all at once. "Like Alex," he said, my name barely more than a whisper. "Yeah." My voice came out rough, unsteady. "Thank you. For everything? For being here, always," I said, and meant it in ways I couldn't begin to articulate. He held my gaze for another long moment, and I swear something passed between us, some acknowledgement of the fact that this felt like more than friendship, that we were crossing into territory neither of us had mapped. Then he looked away, and the moment shattered. "I can handle the rest," he said. "Just stay close, in case I need help." I turned my back while he finished undressing, stared at the bathroom wall, and tried to calm my racing heart. I heard the shower turn on, heard him step inside, heard the sharp intake of breath that meant the water pressure was hitting his injured shoulder. "You okay?" I called. "Yeah, just sensitive." I spent the next 15 minutes sitting on the closed toilet lid, listening to water run, painfully aware of the fact that he was naked on the other side of a thin shower curtain. Try not to think about what that meant or didn't mean or what I wanted it to mean. When he finished, I handed him a towel through the curtain gap without looking, waited while he dried off as much as he could one-handed, then helped him into a clean shirt. We didn't talk much during the process. The silence felt heavy, loaded with things neither of us knew how to say. This became our routine. Every day after school, I'd drive to his house and help him shower, help him change clothes, help him with the physical therapy exercises the doctor had prescribed. His parents were grateful, told me I was a lifesaver. Didn't seem to notice the way their son's eyes followed me around the room, or the way my hands shook every time I touched him. Or maybe they noticed and chose not to say anything. Parents can be surprisingly perceptive when they want to be. A week into this new routine, something shifted again. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was helping him with his shoulder exercises, gentle rotations, careful stretches, movements designed to maintain mobility without causing damage. My hands were on his shoulder, guiding the motion, and he was sitting on the edge of his bed in just his shorts and a tank top. "Does this hurt?" I asked, applying gentle pressure. "No, it's good. You're good at this." I increased the range of motion slightly. "Here, a little tender, but okay." My fingers pressed into the muscle below his collarbone, massaging carefully, and he made a sound soft, involuntary, that sent electricity down my spine. "Sorry," I said quickly, pulling back. "Did I hurt you?" "No." His voice sounded strange, strained. "No, that felt good, actually. The massage part." I resumed the pressure, working the tight muscles around the injury site, trying to ignore the way his skin felt under my hands. The warmth of him, the intimacy of this moment. He'd closed his eyes, his head tilted back slightly, his breathing slow and measured. "Alex," he said after a long moment of silence. Can I ask you something?" My hands stilled. "Of course. Why are you doing this?" "Really?" I resumed the massage, buying time. "Because you're my best friend. Because you needed help? Is that the only reason?" The question hung in the air between us, dangerous and loaded. I could deflect. I should deflect. I should make a joke. Change the subject. Maintain the careful fiction that this was simple and uncomplicated. Instead, I said, "What do you want me to say?" He opened his eyes and turned to look at me, and the expression on his face was raw in a way I'd never seen before. "I want you to tell me the truth." "The truth about what?" "About why you couldn't look at me the first time you helped me undress." About why your hands shake sometimes when you touch me. About why you left that party junior year when you saw me with Emma. My breath caught. He'd noticed. All this time I'd thought I was hiding it so carefully, and he'd noticed. Ethan, because I need to know, he continued, his voice urgent now. If I'm imagining this, if I'm inventing something that isn't there because I want it to be there so badly, I can't think straight anymore. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What are you saying? I'm saying, I think I've been lying to myself for a really long time. I'm saying every time you touch me, even when it's just to help me with something as mundane as putting on a shirt, it feels like my entire nervous system is on fire. I'm saying I look forward to these sessions all day long, even though they're supposed to be medical and clinical and completely non-romantic, because they're the only time I have an excuse to be this close to you. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Ethan, you're on pain medication. You're not thinking clearly. I stopped taking the strong stuff 3 days ago. I'm completely sober right now. He reached up with his good hand and caught my wrist, stopping my massage, holding me there. And I'm completely serious. I need to know if you feel this too, or if I'm about to ruin the best friendship I've ever had by admitting I want more. I stared at him, at the vulnerability written across every line of his face, at the hope and fear warring in his eyes. Every instinct I had screamed at me to protect myself, to deny it, to preserve the friendship rather than risk it for something that seemed impossible. But I was so tired of lying.
Ow.
Yeah, I said, the word coming out barely above a whisper. Yeah, I feel it too. Something enormous and indefinable passed between us. Relief, maybe. Recognition. The terrifying acknowledgement that we were about to step off a cliff together with no guarantee of what waited at the bottom. How long? He asked, honestly. I think since the beginning. I just didn't let myself realize it until recently. The party junior year. With Emma, you were all over her, I said. The memory's still bitter. And I wanted to be happy for you, but instead I felt like someone was carving out my chest with a spoon. That's when I knew it wasn't just friendship. I was trying to make you jealous, he admitted. I thought if I could get a reaction out of you, some sign that you felt something more than friendship, then I'd know it was safe to tell you how I felt. But you just left, and I thought I'd read everything wrong. You were trying to make me jealous? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Turns out I'm not great at emotional strategy. He laughed, but it sounded shaky. I've been terrified for 2 years that if I told you how I felt, you'd disappear from my life. And I'd rather have you as a friend than not have you at all.
Ethan?
I shifted closer, my hand still captured in his grip. I'm not going anywhere. Whether you want me as a friend or something else. I'm not going anywhere. Something else, he said immediately. I want something else. If you do, I do, I said, and felt like I was confessing something sacred. God, I do. He pulled me closer with his good hand, slow and careful, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't want to. I let him draw me in until I was standing between his knees, till our faces were inches apart, until I could count the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Can I kiss you? He asked, and the question was so gentle, so full of hope and hesitation, that I felt something crack open inside my chest. I breathed. Yeah, you can kiss me. Leaned in slowly and I met him halfway. When our lips touched, it felt like every cell in my body had been waiting for this exact moment. The kiss was soft, careful, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. His good hand came up to cup the back of my neck, and I braced my hands on the bed on either side of him. Careful not to jostle his injured shoulder, we broke apart after a moment, both breathing hard, both staring at each other like we couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Holy shit, Ethan whispered. Yeah, I agreed, because there were no other words adequate for the feeling. He kissed me again, less tentative this time, with more confidence and heat. I felt 3 years of wanting pour into that kiss. 3 years of denial and longing and careful self-control, finally breaking free. His mouth was warm and perfect against mine, and I could have stayed there forever. Learning the taste of him, the feel of him, the way he made this small sound of satisfaction when I changed the angle. When we finally broke apart for the second time, I was dizzy with it, drunk on the reality of what was happening, "This is real, right?" I asked. "I'm not hallucinating?" "If you are, we're having the same hallucination." He grinned at me. That impossible smile that had first drawn me in 3 years ago. But now, it was tinged with something new, something intimate and knowing, and meant just for me. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "What do we do now?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never done this before. The whole dating your best friend who's also a guy thing." "Me neither," I said. "But I want to try." "If you do, I do." He pulled me in for another kiss, brief and sweet. "I really, really do." The next 2 weeks were a strange and wonderful period of adjustment. We didn't tell anyone immediately, wanting to figure out what this was between us before we had to explain it to the world. At school, we were still just Alex and Ethan, best friends, nothing different. But when we were alone, we were learning each other in entirely new ways. I still helped him with his recovery routine every day. But now the physical therapy sessions were punctuated with kisses, with quiet conversations about what we wanted. With the gradual exploration of this new dimension to our relationship, we learned that Ethan liked to be the big spoon when we watched movies on his couch, despite his injury. We learned that I had a weakness for the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. We learned how to navigate the strange territory between friendship and romance, how to preserve what we'd always had while building something new. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of awkwardness, times when we'd start to do something and then pause. Unsure if it was okay now, if we were moving too fast or not fast enough. There were conversations about what this meant for our futures, his scholarship offers, my college acceptance, the physical distance that would separate us in just a few months. But there were also moments of pure joy. The first time he held my hand in his car when we were alone. The night we fell asleep on his couch during a movie and woke up tangled together. The morning he texted me good morning with a heart emoji, and I stared at my phone for 5 minutes with a stupid smile on my face. We existed in this private bubble for 2 weeks, and it was perfect and terrifying and more than I'd ever let myself hope for. Then came the day we had to tell his parents. It wasn't planned. We hadn't intended to tell anyone yet, hadn't prepared speeches or figured out the right way to explain. But Ethan's mom came home early from work one afternoon and found us on the couch in a compromising position, which is to say, I was lying on top of him and we were kissing like the world was ending. The sound of the front door opening sent us scrambling apart, but not fast enough. By the time his mom walked into the living room, we were sitting at opposite ends of the couch with guilty expressions and swollen lips, and there was absolutely no way to pretend this was anything other than what it was. She stopped in the doorway, her eyes moving from Ethan to me and back again. The silence stretched out, painful and endless. "Mom," Ethan started, his voice steady despite the panic I could see in his eyes. "I can explain." "I don't think you need to," she said slowly. "What I'm seeing is fairly self-explanatory." I stood up, my heart hammering. "Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry. We didn't mean for you to find out like this." She held up a hand, and I fell silent. She looked at Ethan, her expression unreadable. "How long has this been going on?" 2 weeks, Ethan said. "But Mom, are you happy?" She interrupted. The question clearly caught him off guard. "What?" I asked. "If you're happy with whatever this is." She gestured between us. "Yes," Ethan said without hesitation. "I'm happier than I've been in a long time." She turned to look at me. "Alex, do you care about my son?" "More than anything," I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. She studied us both for a long moment. I braced myself for anger, for disappointment, for rejection. Instead, she sighed and set down her purse. "I had a feeling this was coming. Your father and I have had a running bet for about 6 months now." Ethan's jaw dropped. "You what?" "Honey, you're not as subtle as you think you are. The way you look at Alex, the way you talk about him, the amount of time you spend together." She smiled, and there was something almost fond in her expression. "We figured it was only a matter of time before one of you worked up the courage to do something about it. You're not mad?" I asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Mad? No." "Surprised?" "Also no." She came further into the room, and sat down in the armchair. I will say that I wish you'd told us before I had to walk in on that, but I'm not upset. I just want you both to be happy and to be careful. Careful? Ethan echoed. The world isn't always kind to people in your situation, she said gently. I'm not saying you should hide who you are, but I am saying you should be prepared for the fact that not everyone will be as accepting as your father and I are. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I felt lightheaded. Ethan's mom wasn't just okay with this, she was supportive. She was on our side. Thank you, I said, and the words felt inadequate for the gratitude I felt. She smiled at me. Alex, you've been part of this family since the day you and Ethan became friends. That's not going to change. If anything, this just makes it official. Ethan's dad had a similar reaction when they told him that evening. Mild surprise followed by complete acceptance and a joke about how he'd won the bet. We had dinner with them, normal and comfortable. And by the end of the night, I felt like I could breathe fully for the first time in weeks. Telling our friends was more complicated. We decided to do it gradually, starting with the people we trusted most. Our teammate Marcus was first, and his reaction was a fist bump and dude, finally. We've been waiting for you to figure it out for like a year, apparently. We'd been even less subtle than I'd thought. One by one, we told our close friends. And the reactions ranged from supportive to enthusiastic to completely uncertain. There were a few awkward moments, a couple of people who needed time to adjust their understanding of us. But for the most part, our friend group embraced the change without much drama. School was another matter. We didn't make any big announcements, didn't feel the need to advertise our relationship to the entire student body, but small things gave us away the way we stood closer together in the hallways. The way Ethan's eyes followed me during practice, the fact that I drove him to and from school every day now. Rumors started circulating within a week. Some people were cool about it, others weren't. There were whispers in the hallways, pointed looks, a few comments that cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Someone spray-painted a slur on Ethan's locker, and we had to report it to the administration. There was a particularly brutal Instagram post from some guy on the football team that got Ethan called into the principal's office to discuss whether he felt safe at school. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wondered if we should have waited, if we should have kept this private until after graduation. But then I'd look at Ethan, at the way he smiled when I reached for his hand, at the happiness that radiated from him despite the difficulty. I knew we'd made the right choice. We were done hiding. We were done pretending. We were together, and anyone who had a problem with that could deal with it themselves. The state championship game happened 3 weeks after Ethan's injury. He couldn't play, obviously, but he insisted on being there. On standing on the sidelines with the team, even though his doctor had advised against it, I tried to concentrate on the game, on my defensive responsibilities, on helping us win this thing that we'd worked so hard for all season, but I kept glancing at the sidelines, finding him there watching me with this expression that made my heart do complicated things in my chest. We won. Final score? 3-2, with the winning goal scored in the last 5 minutes. The celebration was chaotic and joyful, everyone piling onto the field, screaming and hugging and crying with relief and triumph. I found Ethan in the chaos, careful of his shoulder as I pulled him into a hug. We did it, I said into his ear. We actually did it. You did it, he corrected. That last defensive save in the second half, Alex? That was incredible. Learn from the best, I said, and he laughed. Bright and happy and perfect. Someone from a local news station wanted to interview the team. And we all gathered for the camera, arms around each other, still high on adrenaline and victory. When they asked what made this team special, our captain talked about dedication and hard work and team chemistry. But when the camera panned to me, I looked directly at Ethan and said, "We play for each other. That's what makes us special." Later that night, at the celebratory party at Marcus's house, someone showed me a screenshot from the news broadcast. It was the moment I'd been looking at Ethan, and the expression on my face was, well, it was pretty obviously not just friendship. "You're all over Twitter," Marcus informed me, shoving his phone in my face. "People are having opinions." "Let them have opinions," Ethan said, appearing at my side with 2 sodas. He handed me one, and then, very deliberately, in front of half our team and most of the party guests, he kissed me. It was brief, just a quick press of lips. But it was public and unmistakable. When he pulled back, there was a moment of silence, and then someone whooped, and the party noise resumed, and that was that. Was that okay? Ethan asked quietly, for my ears only. More than okay, I assured him. Perfect, actually. Asterisk, the weeks that followed were full of last soccer practice, last regular school days. Last Friday night hanging out at our favorite diner, last spring break, graduation loomed on the horizon. And with it came the reality we'd been avoiding. The fact that our futures were pointing in different directions. Ethan's scholarship offers had been withdrawn after his injury, but they'd been reinstated once the doctors confirmed he'd make a full recovery. He'd chosen a school 3 hours south, a good program with a strong soccer team and decent academics. I was still planning on the state university 2 hours north. It's the engineering program I'd been excited about since junior year, 5 hours apart. Different cities, different schools, different lives. We didn't talk about it much. Both of us avoiding the conversation, but it hung over everything like a storm cloud. Finally, one night in late May, sitting on the hood of my car in our favorite parking spot overlooking the city, Ethan brought it up. I've been thinking, he said, his shoulder pressed against mine, his fingers tangled with mine between us. Dangerous activity. He didn't smile at the joke. About next year? About us. My stomach dropped. Okay, 5 hours is far, he continued, but it's not impossible. We could visit on weekends. There are breaks. There's summer. You've thought about this? Thought about nothing but this for weeks? He turned to look at me, his expression serious. Alex, I know long distance is hard. I know the statistics. I know what people say about high school relationships not lasting. But I don't want to break up just because geography says we should. I don't want that either, I said immediately. I want to try. I want to make this work. Yeah, absolutely. Relief flooded his features. Okay, good. Because I have a plan. You have a plan? We visit each other at least twice a month. We video call every night. We're honest about if it gets too hard. We don't make promises we can't keep. We just try. I can work with that, I said, kissed him to seal the agreement. Graduation came and went in a blur of ceremonies and parties and tearful goodbyes. My parents were proud, took 1,000,000 photos, embarrassed me thoroughly. Ethan's parents did the same. At the after-party, Ethan and I sneaked away to be alone, sitting in the bed of his truck, under the stars, talking about the future in a way that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I'm scared, I admitted, of losing you, of this not working. I'm scared too, he said, but I think we'll regret it more if we don't try. When did you get so wise? Had a good teacher. He leaned over and kissed me, slow and sweet. We're going to be okay, Alex. I really believe that. I wanted to believe it too. So I chose to. Summer was perfect and bittersweet. We spent every possible moment together, cramming years' worth of memories into 3 months. We took a road trip to the coast, spent long days at the lake, had countless movie marathons. We talked about everything and nothing. We learned each other's bodies in ways we hadn't yet dared. In the privacy of my bedroom or his when parents were gone, always careful, always respectful of boundaries, always overwhelmed by the intimacy of it. We said I love you for the first time on a random Tuesday in July. We were doing nothing special, just sitting on my back porch eating popsicles in the heat, and Ethan looked at me with sticky purple lips and said, I love you. Just so you know, I'd stared at him, my own popsicle dripping down my hand. Yeah, I've loved you for a while now, I think, but I wanted to say it. Before we leave, so you know, I love you too, I'd said, the words feeling both enormous and natural. So much it's kind of ridiculous. He'd laughed and kissed me, and we'd tasted like sugar and summer and promises. August arrived too fast. Moving day for both of us, 2 days apart. I helped Ethan pack up his truck, load all his belongings into boxes and bags, Prepare for the next chapter. His mom cried. His dad gave him a long hug and some quiet advice. His younger sister made him promise to text her every day. When it was time for him to leave, we stood in his driveway and held each other for a long time, neither of us wanting to be the first to let go. "This isn't goodbye," he said into my shoulder. "This is just see you later. See you in 2 weeks," I confirmed. We'd already planned the first visit. I'd drive down to his school, stay the weekend, see his dorm, meet his roommate. 2 weeks, he agreed. "I can do 2 weeks. Call me when you get there." Obviously. We kissed one last time, and then he got in his truck and drove away. And I stood there watching until he disappeared around the corner. My chest felt hollow, scraped out, too empty. 2 days later, I did the same thing, loaded up my car, hugged my parents goodbye, drove north toward my own future. My roommate was decent, a computer science major who kept to himself. My classes were challenging. The campus was huge and intimidating. I missed home. I missed my parents. I missed Ethan so badly it physically hurt. We talked every night, like we'd promised. Video calls where we'd do homework together or just talk about our days. It helped, but it wasn't the same as being able to reach out and touch him. To see his smile in person, to exist in the same physical space. The 2 weeks until our first visit felt like the longest 2 weeks of my life. When I finally pulled up to his dorm building on a Friday afternoon in late September, he was already outside waiting for me. The moment I got out of my car, he was there, pulling me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "Hi," he said, laughing, his face pressed into my neck. "Hi," I replied, holding him just as tightly. That weekend was everything I'd hoped it would be. We went to one of his soccer games, and I stood in the stands, cheering louder than anyone else. We explored the campus, got late-night food at a diner off campus, stayed up talking until 3 in the morning. We kissed in his dorm room with the door locked, relearning the feel of each other after weeks apart. Sunday came too soon. When I had to leave, when I had to drive back north to my own school, it hurt just as much as the first goodbye had, but we made it work. I visited again 3 weeks later. He came to see me the month after that. We fell into a rhythm, visits every few weeks, nightly calls, constant texts throughout the day. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration, times when the distance felt insurmountable, days when I wondered if we were just prolonging the inevitable. But there were also moments of profound joy. The way his face would light up when he saw me after time apart, the excitement of planning visits, the deep conversations we had late at night when we were both too tired to maintain any walls, the way we learned to communicate more honestly, more openly, because we didn't have the luxury of in-person presence to smooth over understandings. We grew together even while we were apart. We learned what we needed, what we could give, how to sustain this thing we'd built. We learned that love wasn't just about proximity, that caring for someone meant choosing them even when it was difficult. Winter break of freshman year, both came home for 3 weeks. Being together again in our hometown, in the familiar spaces where we'd first fallen for each other.
I think it felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long.
We spent Christmas with our families, celebrated New Year's at the same party where I'd first realized I was jealous. Kissed at midnight while everyone else cheered around us. "I'm so glad we're making this work," Ethan said that night, his forehead pressed to mine. "Me too," I replied. "I can't imagine doing this with anyone else." "You won't have to," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere." The second semester was harder. The novelty of college had worn off, replaced by the grind of classes and assignments and social obligations. We were both busy, stretched thin by academic demands and extracurriculars. The visits became less frequent, once a month instead of every few weeks. The nightly calls sometimes got skipped when one of us had too much work or was too exhausted. We had our first real fight in March, over something stupid: missed plans, miscommunication, frustration that had been building for weeks. It was our first argument where we weren't in the same room, and fighting over video chat felt worse somehow, more disconnected and cold. "Maybe this isn't working," Ethan said at one point, his face pixelated on my laptop screen, his voice echoing slightly. "Maybe we're just making this harder than it needs to be."
Ouch.
What are you saying? My heart was hammering, fear clawing at my throat. I don't know. I'm tired, Alex. I'm tired of missing you. I'm tired of having to schedule my life around visits. I'm tired of feeling like I'm only getting pieces of you instead of all of you, so you want to break up? The question hurt to ask. He was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't. But I don't know how to make this not hurt. I don't either, I admitted. But I know I don't want to lose you. I know that even with all the difficulty, even with missing you constantly, I'd rather have this than not have you at all. Yeah, absolutely. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said. I'm just overwhelmed, I know. I get it. I feel the same way sometimes. I took a breath. But we promised we'd be honest with each other. So if this gets too hard, if you need something to change, tell me. Don't just let it build up until we explode at each other. Same goes for you. We talked for another hour. Working through the frustration, reconnecting, remembering why we were doing this. By the end of the call, we were okay. Shaken, maybe, but okay. That fight taught us something important. That we needed to be more intentional, more deliberate about maintaining our connection. We started scheduling regular date nights over video weed, order the same food from different restaurants, pull up the same movie, and watch it together while on call. We sent each other care packages filled with inside jokes and favorite snacks. We were more careful about communication, more honest about our needs. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and we were determined to make it work. Summer of sophomore year felt like a reset. We came home, spent 3 glorious months in each other's company, remembered what it was like to not have to plan every moment together. We got part-time jobs at the same ice cream shop, working the same shifts so we could spend our days together. We took another road trip, this time up the coast, camping and hiking and existing in the simplicity of each other's presence, on a beach in Oregon. Watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, Ethan turned to me and said, I've been thinking about transferring. My heart stuttered. What? Not for this year, but maybe for junior year. There's a school close to yours with a decent soccer program. I could apply, see if I get in. Ethan, you can't give up your scholarship, your team, your school because of me. I'm not giving anything up. I'm choosing something different. Something that would make me happier. But what if you regret it? What if you resent me? He took my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm. Alex, I've spent the last year learning what matters to me. And yeah, soccer matters. My education matters. But you matter more. You've always mattered more. I don't want you to sacrifice for me. It's not a sacrifice. It's a choice, and I want to make it. If you'll have me, I looked at him, at the certainty in his eyes, at the love written across every feature. Of course I'll have you, always. He applied for transfer during the fall of sophomore year. Got accepted in February with a partial scholarship. Spent spring semester wrapping up his commitments at his current school, saying goodbye to teammates and friends, preparing for the move. Junior year started with Ethan at a school 20 minutes from mine, close enough to visit easily, close enough to have spontaneous dinners together, close enough that distance was no longer our primary challenge. We didn't move in together. Both of us had roommate situations we were committed to, and we agreed it was important to maintain some independence. But we spent most nights together anyway, alternating between his place and mine, building a shared life that spanned both campuses. It wasn't always easy. Learning to exist in the same space again after a year of distance came with its own challenges. We had to negotiate boundaries, learn each other's living habits, figure out how to balance together time with independence. We had arguments about dishes and schedules and whose turn it was to be the responsible one, but we also had lazy Sunday mornings tangled in bed together. We had impromptu study sessions that turned into makeout sessions. We had the mundane joy of grocery shopping together, of cooking dinner in his tiny kitchen, of falling asleep to the sound of each other's breathing. We built a life, a real, tangible life that existed outside the confines of scheduled visits and carefully planned phone calls. Senior year arrived with the weight of future decisions. Ethan had graduate school applications to submit, He wanted to get his master's in sports management, had his eye on programs that would let him eventually work in athletic administration. I was applying for engineering positions, interviewing with companies, trying to figure out where I wanted to start my career. We talked about the future constantly, where we'd end up, whether we'd be in the same city, how we'd navigate the next stage of our lives. It was scary and exciting and overwhelming all at once. "I think I want to stay close," Ethan said one night in November. "Whatever program I choose, wherever I end up, I want it to be somewhere you could be too. Can't make your whole life about following me around," I said. Even though part of me desperately wanted exactly that. I'm making my life about being with the person I love while also pursuing my own goals. Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. What if I get a job offer somewhere you can't go? Then we figure it out together, like we always do. Got a job offer in Marcia, good position at an engineering firm in the city, about an hour from where we'd gone to school. Ethan got accepted to a graduate program at a university in the same city with a full scholarship. We moved into a tiny apartment together in July, barely big enough for both of us, but it was ours. The first morning I woke up in that apartment, with Ethan's arm draped over my waist and sunlight streaming through the window. I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, contentment, bone-deep certainty that I was exactly where I was. Supposed to be, that was 3 years ago. Now we're sitting on the couch in our slightly bigger apartment we upgraded last year. When we could finally afford it tanned, Ethan is scrolling through photos on his phone. "Remember this?" he asks, showing me a picture from that first summer, the two of us on his back porch with popsicles. "The day you told me you loved me." First time, he corrects. I've said it about 1,000,000 times since then, and I never get tired of hearing it. He sets his phone aside and turns to me, that same impossible smile that first caught my attention 7 years ago. "I love you, Alex Morrison. I love you too, Ethan Carter." He kisses me, slow and familiar and perfect. When he pulls back, there's something in his expression, nervous excitement maybe, or anticipation. "What?" I ask. "Nothing. Just thinking about the future." "What about it?" "Thinking maybe we should make it official." "The future, I mean?" My heart starts beating faster. "Official how?" He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small box, and suddenly, I can't breathe. "Official like this." He opens the box to reveal 2 simple silver bands, elegant and understated. "I know we can't legally get married yet, not in this state, but I want you to know that I'm committed to this, to us, for the long haul." So I got us rings. Promise rings, I guess. Or engagement rings. Or whatever you want to call them. Symbols that we're in this together. I'm staring at him, at the rings, at the hope and love written across his face. "Ethan, you don't have to answer now. You can think about it. But I wanted you to know that when I think about my future, you're in every single version of it. There's no version of my life that makes sense without you in it." "Yes," I say, the word coming out choked. "Yes. Obviously yes." His entire face lights up. He takes one of the rings from the box and slides it onto my left hand, and I take the other and do the same for him. The metal is cool against my skin, but it warms quickly. Becomes part of me. We kiss again, and it feels like a promise, like a beginning. Like everything we've built over the past 7 years, crystallizing into this single, perfect moment. Later, when we're lying in bed together, his head on my chest and my fingers running through his hair, he says, "Do you ever think about that first day in the hospital? When I asked you to help me?" "All the time," I admit. "That's when everything changed." "No," he says thoughtfully. "I think everything changed the day I saw you in the hallway freshman year and decided you needed to try out for soccer. That's when my whole life shifted. I just didn't realize it yet. Maybe it was both. Maybe it was 100 different moments all leading to this one." "I like that," he says. "I like thinking about all the choices and chances that brought us here." Me too. We fall asleep like that, tangled together, rings on our fingers, the future stretching out before us like an open road. There will be challenges ahead, there always are, but we've proven we can handle distance, can handle change, can handle whatever life throws at us as long as we're facing it together. I used to think love was about grand gestures, about dramatic declarations and sweeping romance, but what Ethan and I have taught me is that love is also about the small things. It's about showing up every day. It's about helping someone shower when they're injured. It's about choosing each other over and over again, even when it's difficult. It's about building a life together, one ordinary moment at a time. That's the kind of love that lasts. That's the kind of love worth fighting for. And that's the kind of love we have. The indift you made it this far. Thank you for reading our story. Did this story touch your heart? Should there be a part 2 where we see what happens next in Alex and Ethan's journey together? If you want more stories like this, please subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt LGBTQ plus love stories like AE. This video, if it moved UCOMUNT below, telling us what your favorite moment was. Let us know. What should happen in part 2? Marriage? Starting a family? New challenges? Drop your ideas below. Part 2. Our forever starts now. The morning light filtered through our bedroom window, casting golden streaks across Ethan's sleeping face. I'd been awake for 20 minutes just watching him, turning the silver ring on my finger over and over, still unable to believe this was real. We were engaged. Or promised. Or whatever you wanted to call it when two men committed their lives to each other in a state that didn't recognize their love as legal yet. Ethan stirred, his eyes fluttering open. And when he saw me watching him, he smiled that slow. A sleepy smile that was mine and mine alone. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied. Leaning down to kiss him softly, he caught sight of his own ring, and his smile widened. "Last night actually happened. I was half convinced I dreamed it."
Happened.
I confirmed. "You're stuck with me now. Best decision I ever made." We lay there for a while longer, talking about nothing and everything, about what these rings meant, about when we'd tell our families, about what came next. Eventually, hunger drove us out of bed and into the kitchen, where Ethan made his famous terrible pancakes, always burned on one side. Raw in the middle, and I made scrambled eggs to compensate. "We should tell our parents this weekend," Ethan said, drowning his pancakes in syrup to hide the taste. "Both of them. Together. You want to drive home?" "Yeah, I want to do this right. Tell them in person. Let them see how happy we are." I reached across the table and took his hand, my thumb brushing over his ring. "Okay, let's do it." That Saturday, we made the drive back to our hometown, our hands linked on the center console, rings catching the sunlight. We decided to tell Ethan's parents first. They'd always been more openly emotional. And we figured their enthusiasm would give us courage for my parents, who were more reserved. Ethan's mom opened the door before we even knocked, pulling us both into hugs like she always did. "My boys, what a wonderful surprise. Your father's in the garage, let me get him." We gathered in their living room, the same living room where Ethan's mom had caught us kissing years ago, where so much of our story had unfolded. Ethan was nervous, I could tell by the way he kept adjusting his position, the way his knee bounced slightly. So his dad said, settling into his recliner, "What brings you to home? Nothing's wrong, I hope?" "Nothing's wrong," Ethan assured them. "Actually, something's very right." He reached for my hand and I gave it to him, letting him take the lead. "Alex and I, we've decided to make things official. Or as official as we can right now." He held up our joined hands, showing them the rings. "We're engaged. We're promised. We're committing to spend our lives together." For a moment, there was silence. Then Ethan's mom let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and launched herself at us, wrapping us both in a fierce hug. "Oh my God," she was saying, laughing and crying at the same time. "Oh my God, I'm so happy for you both." Ethan's dad stood more slowly, but his smile was just as wide. He shook my hand first, then pulled me into a hug. "Welcome to the family, Alex. Officially. I've been part of the family for 7 years, Mr. Carter." "Call me Dave," he said. "We're going to be family for real now. No more of this Mr. Carter business." Ethan's mom insisted on opening a bottle of champagne. Insisted on calling Ethan's sister to tell her the news. Insisted on planning a celebratory dinner for that evening. The joy in that house was overwhelming and infectious, and by the time we left to visit my parents, I was riding high on their acceptance and love. My parents' reaction was more measured, but no less meaningful. My mom hugged us both, tears in her eyes, but her smile controlled. My dad shook Ethan's hand solemnly, then mine, then said, "You two have always been good together. I'm glad you're making it permanent." "Even though we can't legally marry yet?" I asked, needing to hear him say it. "The law will catch up eventually," my dad said. "What matters is that you love each other and you're committed to making it work. That's what marriage is really about anyway. The legal stuff is just paperwork." We had dinner with my parents, comfortable and warm, and by the time we drove back to the city that night, I felt like I was floating. "That went well," Ethan said, his hand back in mine. "Better than well. That was perfect. Now we just have to figure out the rest of our lives." I laughed. No pressure or anything. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning and decision-making. We couldn't legally marry in our state, but we could have a commitment ceremony, something to celebrate our relationship with friends and family. To make promises to each other in front of the people who mattered most, Ethan's mom took charge of planning with an enthusiasm that was both touching and slightly overwhelming. She found us a venue, a beautiful garden space outside the city. She helped us find an officiant willing to perform the ceremony. She coordinated with my mom on guest lists and invitations and all the 1,000 details that went into planning a wedding that wasn't legally a wedding. We kept it small, just close friends and family. About 50 people total. We didn't want a big production. Didn't want to make this into something performative. We just wanted the people we loved to witness us promising forever to each other. The ceremony was scheduled for June, almost exactly 8 years after the day we'd first met. It felt right, full circle. A perfect way to mark the journey we'd been on together as the date approached. I found myself getting more nervous than I'd expected. Not about marrying Ethan. I'd never been more certain of anything in my life, but about standing up in front of everyone we knew and being that vulnerable, that open about what we meant to each other. Ethan asked one night, 3 weeks before the ceremony. We were addressing invitations at our kitchen table, his handwriting neat next to my terrible scrawl. "Yeah, just nervous. About the ceremony. About everything, I guess. About standing up there and saying all these things in front of everyone. About what it means, making this promise." He set down his pen and turned to face me fully. "Alex, we've been making this promise to each other every day for years. The ceremony is just making it official. Nothing about how we feel changes. I know. I just want to get it right. Want to say the right things, make you understand how much this means to me. Could stand up there and recite the phone book, and I'd still be the happiest person in the room," he said, smiling. "Because I get to marry you. That's all that matters." I pulled him into a kiss, deep and grateful. "How are you always so calm about everything?" "I'm not calm. I'm terrified," he admitted. "But I'm more excited than I am scared. We're going to stand up in front of everyone we love and tell them that we choose each other." "That's incredible, Alex. That's everything." The week before the ceremony, both of our families arrived in town. Ethan's parents stayed with his sister, who lived about an hour away. My parents got a hotel near our apartment. We had dinners and brunches and gatherings where both families mixed and mingled, where bonds were strengthened and new inside jokes were formed. The night before the ceremony, tradition dictated that Ethan and I shouldn't see each other. He stayed with his parents while I stayed at our apartment, and the separation felt wrong after so many years of falling asleep beside him. Marcus came over with pizza and beer, appointed himself my guardian for the evening. "Can't have you getting cold feet and running away," he joked. "Not a chance," I said. "I've been waiting for this day for 8 years. You two are disgusting," he said affectionately. "Absolutely nauseating with how perfect you are together. It's inspiring and annoying at the same time." We stayed up late talking about the early days, about that first soccer season, about how obvious it had been to everyone else that Ethan and I were in love long before we figured it out ourselves, about all the moments that had led to this one. "You know what I remember most?" Marcus said around midnight. "The day after Ethan's injury, when you were helping him at practice. The way you looked at him when you thought no one was watching, like he was the only person in the world." I knew then that you two were endgame. We almost didn't make it, I admitted. That first year of college, when we were long distance, there were times I thought we'd break. But you didn't. That's what matters. You fought for it. Both of you. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and perfect, the sky an impossible blue. I woke up nervous and excited, my stomach doing flips, my hands shaking slightly as I got ready. My dad helped me with my tie weed, decided on suits. Simple and classic. Navy blue for me, and charcoal gray for Ethan. You look good. Son, my dad said, his voice gruffed with emotion. Really good, thanks, Dad. Your mother and I, we're proud of you. Of the man you've become, of the relationship you've built with Ethan. We couldn't ask for a better partner for you. I hugged him hard, feeling like a kid again for just a moment. Thank you. For everything. For accepting us, for supporting us, for loving Ethan like he's your own son. He is our son, my dad said simply. Has been for years now. The ceremony was outdoors in the garden. Chairs set up in neat rows, facing an arch covered in flowers. Our guests arrived, dressed in their best, smiling and laughing and hugging each other. The sun was warm, but not too hot. And everything felt perfect in a way that seemed almost impossible. I stood at the front with Marcus beside me as my best man, watching people file in and take their seats. My heart was hammering, anticipation and joy and nervousness all mixed together. Then the music started, and everyone stood, and I looked toward the entrance. Ethan appeared, walking down the aisle with his parents on either side of him. He was wearing the charcoal suit we'd picked out together, his hair styled neatly, his face lit up with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Our eyes met across the distance, and everything else fell away. This was it. This was everything. He reached the front, hugged his parents, then turned to face me. I took his hands in mine, both of us wearing matching silver rings, both of us barely holding back tears. The officiant began speaking, talking about love and commitment and the journey we'd been on together. But I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Ethan, on the way his eyes were shining, on the way his hands squeezed mine. Then it was time for vows. I went first, my voice shaking slightly as I began. Ethan, 8 years ago, you stopped me in a hallway and told me I should try out for soccer. That one conversation changed my entire life. You've been my best friend, my partner, my home. You've seen me at my worst and somehow decided I was worth loving anyway. You've taught me what it means to show up for someone, to choose them every single day, to build something real and lasting together. I promise to keep choosing you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to support your dreams, to hold you when things are hard, to celebrate with you when things are good. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. I love you more than I have words to express, and I can't wait to spend forever showing you just how much. Ethan was crying openly now, not bothering to hide the tears streaming down his face. He took a shaky breath and began his own vows. Alex, you were the best decision I ever made. From that first day when I convinced you to try out for soccer, I knew there was something special about you. I just didn't realize it would take me 3 years to figure out I was in love with you. You've been patient with me, understanding when I was scared, supportive when I was struggling. You've shown me what real love looks like. Not the easy, Hollywood version, but the kind that requires work and communication, and choosing each other even when it's hard. You drove 3 hours every few weeks during our freshman year just to see me for a weekend. You held my hand when I was scared. You've built a life with me that exceeds every dream I ever had. I promise to love you fiercely and faithfully. I promise to be honest with you, even when it's difficult. I promise to grow with you, to change with you, to face whatever comes next side by side. You're my home, Alex. You always have been. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even Marcus was wiping at his face, was trying to be subtle about it. The officiant asked for the rings which we were already wearing, but we'd bought new ones for the ceremony. Plain gold bands to go alongside the silver promise rings. We exchanged them slowly, sliding them onto each other's fingers. Another symbol of the commitment we were making, by the power vested in me, the officiant said, smiling, and in front of all these witnesses. I now pronounce you partners for life. You may kiss." Ethan pulled me in before the officiant even finished speaking, kissing me like his life depended on it, and I kissed him back with everything I had. Our friends and family erupted into applause and cheers, but I barely heard them. All I could focus on was Ethan, was this moment, was the perfect rightness of finally, officially, completely belonging to each other. The reception was held in the same garden. Tables set up under strings of lights that would illuminate the space once the sun set. There was food and music and dancing, toasts that made us laugh and cry, moments of pure joy shared with everyone we loved. Ethan's dad gave a speech about how he'd known from the moment he met me that I was special, that I was the kind of person who would love his son the way he deserved. My mom talked about watching our friendship blossom into something deeper, about how proud she was of the men we'd become. Marcus told embarrassing stories from high school that had everyone laughing. When it came time for our first dance, Ethan pulled me onto the makeshift dance floor and into his arms. The song was one we'd picked together, something slow and romantic, and we swayed together under the lights while everyone watched. "Husband," Ethan whispered in my ear, even though legally we weren't husbands yet. "Hi yourself," I replied, holding him closer. "How does it feel?" "Like everything finally makes sense. Like every choice I've ever made has led me to this exact moment." Sappy teased, but his voice was thick with emotion. "You love it," he corrected. "Everything else is just details." The party went late into the night. We danced with our parents, with our friends, with each other. We cut the cake which Ethan smashed into my face, despite my warnings, and toasted with champagne. We laughed until our faces hurt and cried happy tears and soaked in every money. It's a perfect day. As the night wound down and guests started leaving, Ethan's mom pulled us both aside. "I have something for you," she said, handing us an envelope. "Your father and I wanted to give you something special. Open it later, when you're alone." We thanked her, tucked the envelope away, said goodbye to the last of our guests. Finally, it was just the two of us, standing in the garden under the lights, surrounded by the remnants of the best day of our lives. "Ready to go home?" I asked. "With you?" "Always." Back at our apartment, we kicked off our shoes and collapsed onto the couch, exhausted and exhilarated. Ethan remembered the envelope from his mom and retrieved it from his jacket pocket. Inside was a check, a generous one, enough to make both of our eyes widen, and a note. "Dear Ethan and Alex, we couldn't be prouder of the life you've built together. Use this money for whatever you need: a honeymoon, a down payment on a house, or just to make your life a little easier as you start this new chapter. You deserve every happiness, and we're honored to be part of your journey. Love, always." "Mom and Dad, they're giving us money for a house," Ethan said, his voice awed. "We can't accept this," I protested, even as my mind was already racing with possibilities. "We can, and we will. They want to do this for us." He set the check aside and pulled me close. "We could actually buy a place, Alex, something that's ours. Build a real future. We already have a real future. You know what I mean? A house, maybe a yard, room to grow." "Room to grow," I repeated, smiling. "You thinking about kids?" "Maybe, eventually. Are you?" I thought about it, about what our life could look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Yeah, I think I am." "Good," Ethan said, kissing me softly, "because I want everything with you. The house, the kids, the whole domestic dream. I want to build a life that would make our younger selves proud." "I think we already have," I said. "But I'm excited to see where we go from here." We've spent the next several months house hunting, looking at properties in neighborhoods near both of our work commutes. We found a small house with a yard, 3 bedrooms, enough space to grow into. It needed work. The kitchen was outdated. The bathroom had weird tile, but it had good bones and felt like home the moment we walked in. We made an offer. It was accepted. We signed what felt like 1,000 papers, handed over the check from Ethan's parents, plus our savings. And suddenly, we were homeowners the day we got the keys. We stood in the empty living room and just looked at each other. "This is ours," Ethan said wonderingly.
Oh,
"Ours," I confirmed. We spent that first night sleeping on an air mattress in the master bedroom, surrounded by boxers, planning out what we'd do with each room. It was uncomfortable and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Over the next year, we slowly made the house our own. We renovated the kitchen together well. We hired professionals, but we picked out every detail. Argued over tile choices, compromised on cabinet colors. We painted the bedrooms, refinished the hardwood floors, planted flowers in the yard. We hosted our first dinner party, cramming 10 people around a table meant for 6. We had our families over for holidays, creating new traditions in our own space. We adopted a dog rescue mutt named Charlie who had Ethan's eyes and my energy level. And suddenly our house felt even more like home. Work was going well for both of us. Ethan was excelling in his graduate program, already getting offers for positions after graduation. I'd been promoted at the engineering firm, given more responsibility and better pay. We were building careers we were proud of, but more importantly, we were building a life we loved. 2 years after our commitment ceremony, the law finally changed. Our state legalized same-sex marriage. Suddenly, what we'd always considered ourselves married became legally true. We didn't have another big ceremony. Instead, we went to the courthouse on a random Tuesday afternoon with just our parents and closest friends as witnesses. A judge performed the ceremony, brief and official. And when she said, "You may now kiss your husband," it felt both exactly the same and completely different from our ceremony in the garden, because now it was legal. Now the law recognized what we'd known all along, that we belonged to each other, that our love was real and valid and worthy of protection. We went out for dinner afterward. Just the 8 of us, celebrating quietly but deeply. And when we got home that night, legally married at last, Ethan pulled me into his arms and said, "Finally, you're my husband for real." "I've been your husband for real for years," I reminded him.
I know.
"But now, everyone else has to recognize it too. Now we have all the legal protections, all the rights. Now nobody can question what we are to each other." He was right. It felt significant in a way I hadn't fully expected. We were protected now, legally bound. Our relationship had the same weight and recognition as any straight couples. It felt like winning. 3 years into living in our house, we started seriously discussing kids. We'd talked about it in abstract terms before, but now we were ready to make it real. We researched our options: adoption, surrogacy, foster care, and eventually decided to pursue adoption. The process was long and complicated and emotionally exhausting. There were home studies and background checks and interviews. There were classes on parenting and trauma and attachment. There were moments when we questioned if we were ready, if we could handle this, if we were enough. But we kept moving forward, together, like we always had. And then 2 days after Ethan's 29th birthday, we got the call. There was a 3-year-old boy named Lucas who needed a home. He'd been in foster care for a year, had been through 2 failed placements, had experienced trauma that made him wary and withdrawn. The social worker wanted to know if we'd be interested in meeting him. We said yes immediately. The first time we met Lucas, he hid behind his social worker and wouldn't look at us. He was small for his age, with dark curly hair and huge brown eyes that seemed too old for such a young face. "Hi, Lucas," Ethan said gently, crouching down to the boy's level. "My name is Ethan. This is my husband, Alex. We heard you might want to come live with us." Lucas peeked out from behind the social worker but didn't respond. "We have a dog," I offered. "His name is Charlie. He's very friendly and loves kids." That got a flicker of interest. "A dog? A big, goofy dog who thinks he's a lapdog, even though he weighs 60 pounds, Ethan said, smiling. "Would you like to meet him?" Lucas nodded slowly. We spent the next hour at our house, letting Lucas explore at his own pace, while Charlie followed him around adoringly. Lucas didn't talk much, but he smiled when Charlie licked his hand. And he let Ethan show him the bedroom we'd prepared, painted blue with stars on the ceiling, filled with toys and books, carefully chosen for a 3-year-old. "This would be your room," Ethan explained. "If you wanted to come stay with us, you could decorate it however you like. Change the colors, Add posters. Whatever you want. Lucas touched the stuffed animals arranged on the bed. Mine, all yours, I confirmed. He looked up at us with those two old eyes. You want me? The question broke my heart. Yes, I said, kneeling down beside him. We want you very much. If you want us to? He thought about it for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, he said, Okay. Lucas came to live with us 2 weeks later. The transition was hard. He had nightmares. He tested boundaries. He struggled to trust that we wouldn't send him away like everyone else had. There were tantrums and tears and moments when I questioned if we were equipped to handle this, but there were also breakthroughs. The first time Lucas called Ethan Daddy unprompted. The morning he climbed into our bed because he had a bad dream and wanted comfort. The day he drew a picture of our family, 2 dads, a boy, and a dog, and proudly hung it on the refrigerator. Slowly, carefully, he became ours, and we became his. The adoption was finalized 6 months later. We stood in family court with Lucas between us, our hands on his shoulders, and listened to the judge declare him legally ours. Lucas Christopher Morrison Carter, our son. We had a party afterward. Our house full of friends and family celebrating this new addition. Lucas was overwhelmed by the attention, but also clearly thrilled. Running around showing everyone his new birth certificate that listed both of us as his fathers. That night, after everyone had gone home and Lucas was tucked into bed, Ethan and I stood in the doorway of his room and watched him sleep. We're dads, Ethan whispered. We're dads. I agreed. This is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But also amazing. The most amazing thing we've ever done. He took my hand, squeezed it. Thank you. For building this life with me. For taking every crazy leap together. Always, I said. The same promise I'd made to him 8 years ago in his bathroom. Always. I'm standing in our backyard watching Lucas play soccer with Ethan. Our son is 8 now, confident and happy, and nothing like the scared 3-year-old who first came to us. He's wearing a jersey with Ethan's old number, his curly hair bouncing as he runs, his laughter ringing out across the yard. Charlie is lying at my feet, gray around the muzzle now, but still devoted. The garden is in full Blue Methan's project over the past few years. Flowers and vegetables and herbs, all carefully tended. Our house is expanded to accommodate our growing family. We've finished the basement, updated the kitchen again, built a deck where we have family barbecues. The walls are covered with photos of our commitment ceremony, our legal wedding, Lucas's adoption day. Countless everyday moments captured and treasured. Life is good. Better than good. It's everything I never knew I wanted. Lucas scores a goal, and Ethan cheers, picking him up and spinning him around. Our son is laughing, his arms wrapped around Ethan's neck, and the love between them is so obvious it makes my chest ache. Ethan catches my eye and grins, and I'm transported back to that first day in the hallway, to a 16-year-old boy with an impossible smile telling me I should try out for soccer. Best decision I ever made. To be continued.